Hello there. Welcome to the next podcast. My name is Brett Lovins. This is a podcast with my friend Dan. So we didn't, it's funny. I go into these conversations with a general plan. It doesn't always work out. So I'm going to add some information about Dan to the pre-roll here. So Dan, I'm reticent to use the word sponsor. So that's maybe for an upcoming episode. I like the way that one of my mentors, sponsor, whatever we want to call it, in Spokane used to say is that we sponsor each other. And that's really been my experience. So, those of you that are traditional AA folks or not, or whatever, that feel like, the sponsor has, sort of the overseer or whatever. I have not been that way. It just doesn't work for me, because the truth is that I learn from everybody that I'm around. And, Dan did ask me to sponsor him. We went through the steps, which was just a series of conversations. That's the way I look at it, the way my sponsor Todd looked at it. And you can go back and listen to my conversation with Todd, my original sponsor. But AA was kind of the only thing that was around, the only thing I knew. And I was so grateful for it, and still am today. So what's cool about this conversation, again, is I think it is that Dan and I haven't talked for a good while. We had a very brief phone conversation before we scheduled this recording, and we agreed to basically stop talking because we were starting to roll, and it was clear that we wanted to keep the spontaneity intact. So you'll hear two people, that knew each other well. I knew Dan when he came in, from being beat up in the world of alcohol, and he'll tell part of his story as well. But I hope you can hear, the genuine friendship that has enough, foundation to it that we just pick right up where we left off. So it's sort of implicit in that is that I'm not one of these people that, is like, I have to have a sponsor, and, my sponsor and I go through everything, and those that do, that's wonderful. I have no qualms with it. But I think it's important for me to be honest with my story, honest with my experience, honest with my experience, strength, and hope. And in my case, here's an example of that. So Dan and I get together, we have a conversation. Dan, to me, is unusual, at least from my vantage point, through my story, in that he comes in young, right? So here's a younger man sitting in mostly older people circles at AA meetings. I got sober when I was 43, and Dan gets sober when he's 26, which he'll talk about. So I hope you enjoy the conversation. I sure did. Dan, thanks for doing this, and thanks for sponsoring me back, my friend. All right, here we go.
All right.
How are you, man?
I'm excellent. How are you?
I'm good. It's been a while. It's good to see you.
Yes, it has. Good to see you too.
Well, let's start talking. This is a podcast, so we're going to record, and I don't know exactly what we'll say. I've got a few ideas here. One thing that's I think is kind of interesting is we haven't seen each other in a while, right?
I know it. It's been quite a while.
Like probably what, 2 or 3, 4 years, maybe?
Well, it'd have to be somewhere around 3, because I got my 3-year coin, and it's pretty much as soon as that COVID thing hit is when I kind of, yeah,
for sure. But one of the things that I really dig, and I'll be curious if it's the same as for you, in recovery circles and with people like us that have a little bit of history together. I mean, it's just cool to catch. It's like pick right up where you leave off. Like I'm stoked to see you, and you know what I mean. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah. It's I think we all have a couple of those, like, really old friends, the ones that, you came up with, and it doesn't matter the amount of time, you just get back with and you pick back up. And, I got to thinking about it, because as you and I were on the phone a couple weeks ago now, it was so easy, like nothing had happened, and the only thing I can really accredit it to is, like, there's, everything about me. You know what I mean? You've been there and you've seen me when I was, real vulnerable and in a real bad spot.
Yeah.
And you've seen me come through it. So there's nothing weird. You know what I'm saying?
Totally. Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah. And yeah, so to set the stage too, just to tee off on that a little bit. So Dan, I watched you walk in, right? I remember, so yeah, what's your sobriety date or how long you been sober now? A little bit.
Sobriety date would be January the 14th of 2017. Gives me a little bit more than 6 years. And I mean, I can't believe it. You know what I mean? It's unreal.
Every day is that way for me, man. I hope I never lose touch with that amazement that, what seemed like such a mud pit that I was slogging through, every day it's not around. It's a different life. And it seemed so impossible not so long ago.
Yeah, it just sometimes, there's still those little moments that I get where I hadn't had one in so long. And I can remember like my first one after getting sober. And when I kind of thought for a second, I'm like, there's nothing wrong.
Yeah.
There it is. And it's, it's like, this is great. This is great. I feel great. I don't got to worry about anything that happened last night, the day before. I'm not anxious about anything.
Yeah.
And so it's just that it seems like those moments seem to stack up a little closer together these days,
Well, let me just ask you, do you remember when you first got one of those? How long had you been clear of it?
It'd probably been about 6 months. And I think I remember exactly when it was. So what would that be? January till July, end of July. So closer to 7 months. Anyways, within that first like half a year.
Yeah.
And I had taken a trip up to, it's a lake trip that my family took every year when I was a kid. And it'd been probably 5 years since I had gone. Because after I graduated from high school, I was going to college and I was working. And I just kind of ran out of time. And in that period of time, I picked up my partying. And that took precedent overall. All of my days off were spent either partying or recovering. No money or anything like that. And so it was just this place that I had such a history with. And I got there and I'm like, and I'd just gotten through this whole rash of stuff that I'm sure we'll talk about here shortly. And I remember just sitting there going, okay, wow, this is what it could be.
Yeah.
This is what I could have in front of me. And it was warm. I was sitting there, beautiful scenery, nice day. I was around my family. And it was just great.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if anybody's listening to this podcast, that's listened to some other ones too, you'll hear a theme. And this, for me, that's as close to spiritual as you get. Like that for me, those moments that you just describe and when they hit me, like I'm having it right now, just talking to you, it's like, it's amazing. Right. And I mean, you don't get any closer to feeling in touch with the universe than those moments, or at least me, when I'm like, wow, I'm free of all that crap. And I've also said before, it's like living next to a waterfall. You don't hear it when you're living next to a waterfall until it shuts off. And then, whoa, it's weird. What?
Yeah. All that static, right?
Yeah. Well, that's great. So this is a great start. So so one of the things I definitely want to get to, so why don't we just jump into it, Dan, is one of the things that's unique about your story in the time that I've been around, seeing a fair bit of sobriety in and out of, in my case, AA, is your age, right? You come in and so I've already kind of teed you up in that phone call a bit, but you come in at age, what was it?
I was 26.
26. So if you're up for it, to stretch into, like, what was that last year like for you as you approached 26? Because 26 is pretty young for the rooms that we see. And then what's it like to be that age going into into a meeting? What's going on, and then we'll keep going from there. But let's tee you up with that.
Sure. So I mean, I think like a lot of folks, I'm not unique in the fact that my last year was definitely my worst. I had a lot of bad ones, but the progression of it was pretty severe because I never really drank or partied or did anything like that until I was of age 21. So relatively speaking, my period of drinking was very short, and but the progression of it was steep, and it was just, it went from, the innocent, I'm just doing, what kids do, to something completely different rather quickly.
Yeah.
From, being young, being, in the trades, that was kind of our thing. We work hard, we get off work, we drink beer, we get up, we go to work, we drink beer, and that's just how it was. And that was normal. But it happened before my last year, as, me and my friends and the people I had surrounded myself with, and people that I'd known for a long time, is probably my best way to gauge it. We were partying on the weekends together, and then maybe like Thursday night or something like that, or we'd be drinking basically every night, far to excess on the weekends. And as we kind of got older, we all kind of followed that same arc. But then eventually my friends kind of stopped, they kept it to the weekends, or, when they were drinking after work on a Monday, they were having a beer or two or whatever, to where that's not what was going on for me, and I had always attributed it to, well, I'm just a little thirstier than the rest of them, and, I'm more stressed out, or I'm more this, or I'm more that, or I don't have anything going on, whatever it was, all the excuses in the world. And ways that I could try to convince myself that things were normal, for me. And it wasn't, when I got to that last year. Okay. So the last year was basically spent working, feeling terrible. And I was on third shift, if you remember. So I was working all night, and then I'd get off work right about the time that I could start buying alcohol. Okay. So I'm off work at 6 by 6:15 or 18, or whichever store I decided to stop at on the way home. I was in there buying my daily ration, or whatever my first part of my daily ration was going to be, and flying home so I can get into it. And, it's something that I've always thought, it really didn't help, is that, a normal person that works like normal hours, you kind of get the idea that it's time to start shutting down because it's getting dark and it's getting quiet out. Right. Well, for me, being a graveyard guy, right as I was hitting that time I should be going to bed, the day is just getting started. It's the sun's coming out, it's getting warm, there's starting to be life around. It's time to be awake. And so, it just kind of contributed to keeping the party rolling until I couldn't anymore. But it was probably was the last year that I really kind of started having that voice in the back of my head that would be like, this might not be normal, but this probably isn't normal for you to get off work and drink until you puke, and effectively black out every day, and then get up and go and do it again. This isn't normal. This isn't, work hard, drink hard. This is something different. Then there was physical things that started happening. I was starting to have bad stuff happen. My insides weren't doing too good. I remember using the restroom and there being a lot of blood. Right. And I'm like, I really need to slow down at work. I think that work is really stressing me out, and this is probably what's causing it, or cut back on the energy drinks or something, man. Cause there's something that's really messing up. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? But it can't be the booze, but there's always that voice in the back of my head that said that it was, but I can never face it at all.
And then you went to inpatient, right?
I did. So what kind of accumulated with it was I got myself in a little bit of a bind, and with the legal system. And I knew, because I was arrested, and I remember sitting in the back of the cop car being like, what is this, bro? You know, just talking to myself, like, is this what you want? Is this, why are you here right now? What is going on? Okay, this has got to be it. And my now wife that had just uprooted her life and moved up to live with me from California like 5 months earlier, had to come and pick me up from the police station. And I had to sit there and explain to her how all this time that I was telling her that I don't have a drinking problem, I don't have this, I don't have that, that was all a lie. And I got this massive problem sitting in front of me, along with this mess that I had just gotten myself into. And you know, and I can remember, I give my life a lot of credit, because she looked at me and she didn't give me, you know, an inch. We were standing in the kitchen, and I remember she goes, "What are you going to do?" I said, "Well, I suppose I should probably go try to get some help. I don't think I can do this by myself." And so I went and got my assessment done at the local treatment place, and they recommended that I do an outpatient program. And I said, okay. And I started like a day or two later, just right into it, not without having a chance to think twice, right into it.
So you did that, and then so when do you show up at the AA meeting where we met? Like, are you going to outpatient at that point? Is there an overlap happening there?
Yes. So when I first started in with outpatient, I had you know, there's a requirement that you have to hit so many meetings per week, and I'd bounced around to a few, because me being a kid, I didn't really know anything about it. You know, I always thought to myself, you know, AA's for people that aren't like me, that got old and couldn't figure themselves out, and then that's where they go because they couldn't handle it. You know, so I never thought of it. So I'm kind of thrust into this whole new world, and I tried a few, and I wasn't a huge fan of it. I just didn't really feel like I fit in at all. They were kind of chaotic. You know, it was kind of, you know, it was kind of exactly what I had feared it would be, just because I didn't really feel like I fit in. Like, I resonated with the stories that I heard. I was like, oh yeah, that sounds right. You know, we've heard that a million times, right? Like, oh man, that sounds like me. That sounds like me too. But I just never really clicked. And what had happened is that that meeting had come in and done a panel, and I believe it was 4 people, and all 4 of them, I really took interest in their story, and they all seemed like people that I jive with. You know, although I was young, I always seemed to get along with people that were older than me, and these were 4 older gentlemen that really seemed to have their stuff together. You know, they seemed like, you know, they had really gotten a handle on their lives. They were moving forward. They had, you know, good heads on their shoulders. Seemed like real people that I could really talk to. And so they said, you know, this is our meetings. I think they were doing them, what was that, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday? And they said, yeah, that's what it is. And so I showed up, and it was perfect. It was exactly what I needed. And you know, I folded right into that group, and they were so welcoming, and, you know, just such a good, solid group of people that I was able to see a lot of people that I kind of wanted to emulate, you know, as I grew up, per se. And I was like, you know, I think this is the place that I need to be.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and yeah, so there's so much in that. So this is, you know, I'm going to do the narration here of sorts, but, you know, this is a story, right? And what I'm always looking for patterns and evidence, right? And what I'm hearing you say is I found some people that I could, you know, I use the word jive with. There's some people here that I can jive with, and I think that, you know, first off, that you're aware that you need some help. That's a big deal, right? Because that's hard for a lot of people. Second, you go to inpatient right away before you could change your mind, right?
Oh yeah,
because we're so good at changing our minds and thinking we overreacted.
Oh, you bet.
And then third, you're in a meeting, and you found a group. You know, you did the requisite. You found a meeting that felt chaotic to you, or didn't jive with you. Although those people it might have jived with great. You found your way to a group that seemed good, and there you are, and you're starting in on a new thing, right? Like
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. That was, it's, um, fate, destiny, whatever you want to call it. I consider myself fortunate to have, tried one more. And I guess I say I was fortunate that I was, forced to go and do these things. And so it's like, if I have to do this, I might as well look around and not take this one shot and turn AA into something that I had to do, but, give it an opportunity to find a place where it was something that I wanted to do. Yeah. And that's what I was able to find in that group. It was something that I looked forward to.
Well, I got to ask that question that I'm always super curious about. And if you've told me, I've forgotten. Do you remember when the cravings went away? Like, was it fast for you? Was it in the back of that cop car maybe? And
yeah.
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 So,
it was like instant. I was so scared. And I knew 100% that if I wasn't drinking, I wouldn't be here. Right. And for the longest time, it was just nope. And probably the first like year and a half, I was really steadfast on that, mentally, that it never really crossed my mind. And it's funny enough because cravings, not so much, because I think I was so scared throughout that like physical dependency stage of things that any like feelings of sickness or anxiety or anything like that were just completely blocked out by how terrified I was that I completely screwed my life up. Right. And, but where it came in for me was a little later on, things settled down. My wife starts talking to me a little bit more. I'm not really being looked at like, sideways by the people in my family that really know what's going on, as like, oh boy, is he going to be all right? Is this going to stick? All those things, that I could tell that I was kind of being handled with like little kids' gloves there for a while by the people that I really cared about, because they wanted this to work for me. And it wasn't until probably like a year and a half later that it was like ideas like, when you get that perfect sunny day, like after mowing the lawn and I'm sitting out on the back patio, I'm like, a beer or two would probably be just perfect right now, but it quickly got kind of snuffed out, because fortunately I felt like things were going so good at that point. I'm like, yeah, but you don't need it. You don't need that to be happy at this point, to be satisfied with the day.
Yeah.
And, but never cravings, but always those ideas would just kind of float by. It's like, oh man, because I don't know about you, but there's a lot of bad memories of my drinking, but I had some good ones. And there would be certain things that would ping off those memories that were, man, I remember this day and I was hanging out with these people and, we were drinking and barbecuing and hanging out and doing whatever. Man, that was a great day. And, but at that point I'd had days without alcohol that were like that too. So, I've never really caused myself too many problems while I'm sober. So
yeah, and even that, that you notice, so you're having that barbecue without booze, or I'll speak for myself, I'm having one of those moments. Those seemed impossible. Like on the other side of that Grand Canyon, that one could have a barbecue going with some buddies and not be drinking seemed, you're talking Martian to me, like
impossible, right?
Take that away from me and you might as well, what are you talking about? Impossible.
Right.
And then so when I get to practice that and have those moments, it's like, okay. And then, like what Bryce says too, I have a healthy dose of fear that, if I do test it, that I'll be like any number of the other stories that I've heard where,
right.
The Nevy's broke and I'm back. Right. And that's what I want to avoid. So, but yeah, those moments happen for me too, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. That's, I'd spoken to you about this in the past, but hey, stop. The a lot of a huge portion of my fear of just getting out there and asking for help was just this absolutely crippling fear of failure, and not even like failure in itself, but being viewed as a failure, you know, because while I was drinking, I didn't really truly understand addiction at all. Right. I knew that I had cousins and aunts and uncles and friends that had gotten like addicted to drugs, and, you know, whether they were able to pull themselves out of it or you know, or not, that just is what it is. But I had no idea what it was. I thought I was stuck on that idea of it's a morality issue, or you know,
willpower.
Yeah, willpower.
Yeah.
Whatever it may be. It never crossed my mind that I might be, you know, predisposition to having a lot harder time with this sort of thing. And, you know, it I don't know about anybody else, but I can get addicted to just about anything, you know, but it's those things that are simple for me to do that are the shortest from A to B as far as like effort to the feel good are the ones that I'm most susceptible to. Like ice cream, holy cow. When I first got sober, I went from, you know, supporting Anheuser-Busch to supporting Ben and Jerry's on like a big scale. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I do know. Yeah.
Yeah. It was
I haven't met too many people with our condition that, you know, ups and downs with sugar, and other things. Like I'm a sparkling water fiend, right? And the thing is that, you know, what at least for me, this is my take on it, is it can be easy to slip into what I think of as a false equivalency. Like I can start so first off, like I'm good at beating up on myself. I think that's part of my gig. And so, you know, alcohol was great for that because I could not do that. So when I take away the alcohol, like I'm capable of beating up on myself. So I start floating into this, I'm a bad person because I'm eating sugar, as if it's an equivalent to I'm a bad person for, you know, basically checking out of life at 4 p.m. every night for, you know, 10 years.
Oh, sure.
And in both cases, it's not a bad person per se, but I guess what I'm trying to get at is that, you know, you've heard people say this. I've heard people say this, like, you know, I can get addicted to anything. And that's true. And yet I'm just going to say it's not as bad. So
no, it's not. No, sir, it is not.
So those of you that are listening that are playing that game, because I play it even now, even after being sober a while, but those that are on the fence, starting to say things, well, I'll just end up, you know, eating more ice cream. Go to the store and get some ice cream.
I can tell you what, I've never blacked out off ice cream and woke up, you know, in the back of a cop car before.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll ever happen.
No. Oh, but then we have a chance too to bring our, you know, I'll use brain science, bring our frontal lobe into it, bring the reasonable part of ourselves. Because I had no choice. Willpower was toast. Like I'm owned by that stuff. I can resist a bit, but only to a point. And then as soon as I get that first swig in me, it's over. Like I'm back. I'm where I want to be, at least for the next 8 minutes. Yeah. And then I'm back on that hamster wheel. Or with sugar, I wax and wane with it. I work on my diet for a while. You know, the normal human stuff, right? Like
it's not causing detrimental like damage to relationships and things like that. One of my favorite stories that I used to like to share often, I know you like this one, so I had to bring it up, was my daily willpower test. I had 4 or 5 places that I would rotate picking up my daily haul of booze, because you can't go to the same place every day. You know what I mean? Because you don't want nobody thinking that I have a problem. Right. Totally. And so they were stretched out on my commute home from work. And, you know, I'm like, all right, you know what? Today we're not drinking. So we go past spot number 1, but you don't need it. Spot number 2, you don't need it. Number 3, you don't need it. Make it past number 4. Man, you know what? You did such a good job. Spot number 5. Why don't you just pull on in there and get yourself something nice? reward yourself for having enough willpower to make it to the 5th stop and buy my booze, go home, get drunk.
That weird mental stuff. Until we break that, until it seems to me, for me for sure, and probably for many others, until I could break that cycle for at least a little while, right? For other people, it's different. Some people have cravings for longer. It takes a while. I mean, everybody's different on that, but I just don't think anybody has a chance to find out really what's going on or what's possible until they've done that for a period. So that's my take on that.
I follow a lot of a couple of recovery pages like on Instagram, right? And I always get interested about the stories. You see the person, posted on there. I was like, oh, let me see. And so you click on that person and you go through and if you get kind of far enough in there, you'll see it's like the in and out cycle. And it's just a reminder of how challenging that it is and how sneaky this thing is, to where like the first 3 months that I was sober, I was on absolute cloud 9. Right. And just in the time that I've been sober, I've had the opportunity to, just kind of talk a little bit with people that are in my life that are, oh, I need to stop drinking. I really need to throttle back. I'm going to go without for a while. But hey, you know what? Cool. If you ever need a sober buddy to talk to, just give me a call. If you're having a hard time with it, just give me a call, whatever. If you just want to chat, just give me a call. I'm not real big on, pushing my, I guess you call it my sober agenda on people. Yeah. Just because of it can be fragile, as I've seen. I was very fragile in the beginning, so I think if somebody would like pop out at me like, some sort of a clown, be like, "Hey, man, check this out. This is what worked for me. Here's a book. Here's this. Here's this. Here's this. Here's this." I'm like, yeah, forget it. But it just seems like, as I've seen it happen a couple of times, is that things start going good and then right back out. And it's just sad because I've watched it happen where it seems like they'll do good and then they'll go back and it'll get worse. And like you said before, and you told me this when I first came in and I first started speaking with you, you said, I when I hear somebody speak about relapse, I listen very closely. And I took that advice. And anytime that somebody was, brave enough to sit there and talk about how they had, I guess, failed at one point and then brought themselves back, I want to know, because it's always interesting to me that it seemed like it's always when it was going really good and then boom, it's right back in your life. And it still kind of scares me,
Yeah. And I think I personally think a healthy, some people disagree with this, but a healthy dose of fear is in my program, and I don't anticipate it leaving. And a lot of it is built around those stories that you're talking about, listening to people come in after taking a spin and finding out all the stuff that we've heard is true. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I just like, yeah, I'm, and I've said this before. It's like, relapse stories to me are those people are heroes to me. Like that takes huge amounts of courage to do that. And so, yeah, I'm just really appreciative of those that can do that. And then one of the things I want to say is there's also a pattern that I've noticed, like you said they're doing well and they go back out, right? It's usually a period that's reasonable too, like 6 months, Sometimes it's somebody who's comes in and out after a week, but for a lot of us, we have to do what we're going to do in terms of that stuff. But the year mark is actually a really common one. The year mark, there's something about that year. I've gone a year, and they go back out and they're gone for a while, right? It's serious business. Yeah.
Yeah. No doubt. There's the fear thing is real. And the other thing that kind of keeps me going is when I get a streak going on something, I try to keep it going. If it's, so many days, keeping to a diet or exercising or, I quit smoking a little while ago, and man, that was, that was something else. I'd get these streaks going, and when those cravings would hit, I'd be, do you really want to break, this number of days? And, anytime that those, greenfield moments that I remember when I was having such a good time when I was drinking float by, it's like, well, do you really want to break this streak to try to find out? And no, no, thank you.
Yeah, that's well said. All right, let's look at this age thing for a second more. So you're 26. You've come into the room of AA. You've gone through outpatient. You've been sober 6 years. Half of it's with the pandemic, which we all have, right? What's it like to navigate the world as somebody who's not as as old, if you will? Like, what's it like? Because somebody who in the title of this is going to be about your age, so it'll probably attract a few people. So talk to the young man or woman about, is it possible to get sober as a younger person, basically?
Sure. Well, the short answer is yes, it is possible. And in my opinion, of course, I don't feel that I've missed out on anything as far as like having fun. Leading up to being sober, I, like many other stories that I have heard, could not imagine my life without alcohol. Half of that being that in that age range with, with my long-term friends, that's what we were doing. That's what we were doing. We were figuring it out, right? We're all of age. We can all try this. We're adults. We're going to drink, we're going to party. It's fun, whatever. And then the other part being is that all of my new friends were only drinking friends. And so that's the world that I lived in that was constantly fueled by alcohol. When you call somebody up, it wasn't, do you want to, go and do this? It's, hey, you want to have some beers. And so my life had really come to revolve around drinking activities. And when it was time to stop, when I did stop, that fear was still there that I would never be able to have fun again. Because I always thought, oh, well, this is fun. Imagine if I was a little drunk while I was doing it, whatever it was. And that was always kind of the mindset. In full transparency, a lot of the people that I was only hanging out with to drink with, the people that I had met while I was drinking, the majority of those people aren't really a part of my life anymore. But in those cases, I wasn't really getting anything, any sort of like fulfillment in my life over those friendships. It was all based around drinking. Now, my friends that I'd had for a long time, that I came into drinking with, and then I stopped, and some of them kept going. A lot of them still do, but they're regular folks that can have a few and put it down and moderate themselves or do whatever it is. They were just supportive, and it was an interesting thing because I think some people weren't surprised at all when I was like, hey, this is what's going on. I've been having a really hard time with my drinking. This is what happened. But some of them, because I grew up north by Everett, and then I moved down to Pierce County to go to work. And so I didn't have that daily contact with those people anymore as it was. So it kind of kept what I had going on, under wraps. And so when I told them, hey, I'm an alcoholic, I cannot control my drinking, and I've decided to stop and try to stop forever, they were like, oh man, I had no idea what was going on. A lot of them were kind of sympathetic, like, oh, you could have talked to me. They're just good people. And carrying on, it's not even like strange. It's just, I don't drink, and we still do the same stuff, and we still have fun. I probably didn't see my friends, some of my older friends, for about a year, maybe a little longer after I got sober, because of my own feelings of this is going to be strange, or I don't know if I'm ready to navigate that conversation. But as soon as I did the first time, I remember the first time, it's one of my best friends from school. And I said, hey dude, this is what's going on. He goes, oh man, I'm really sorry. That's cool though. You still want to do this, you still want to do that. I'm like, yeah, I do. And everybody has always been super respectful of that. And so it got better. Right. It's tough to explain. So all of that time that I spent being afraid that I'd never have fun doing anything again, or what would people think, what would this, what would that, because of my age, it turned into, hey, it's all good. And it actually got better. It got more fun. It's a little bit easier to be around most of the time. I was more present. I was able to participate in all these things. It's been terrific. Now, being as I've been sober for 6 years now and grown up a little bit, it still is a little bit odd. I do have people that I hang around that are my age that are also sober. And, but it is interesting watching everybody else having that natural progression of kind of like, okay, well, I got kids now, so I can't do this. And, I remember one of my coworkers who had a baby, and he liked to drink a lot. You could almost say that that person may have had a problem, right? First baby comes, gets drunk, gets woke up at like 4 o'clock in the morning by the baby with the worst hangover ever. Hasn't touched it since, and he's able just to do it. And I was like, what? What? As far as me being able to talk about it, much easier now. There's not any ego involved, anything like that. Most of my shame has gone away, and it's a little bit easier for me to talk about. Oh, we're all going to go out and get a beer after work. Like, oh, no, thank you. And if they ask why not, oh, well, I don't drink, and I prefer to not hang around at bars. It's not something that I really want to do. Oh yeah, okay, it's fine. And it's a little bit different. It's very rare though that I kind of get the weird side eye these days where I think, all right, whatever, man. But it's not nearly as scary and terrifying, and the world's not nearly as judgmental of me. And as far as drinking goes, as I had feared it would be.
Yeah. Well said, man. Just as a kind of a comedic addition to what you just said, I would have been the guy with the sideways eyes. Like, that's my story, folks. Like, if somebody's listening to this and they're thinking, if you're like me, you've gotten curious, right? Things have gone sideways enough that you're probably listening by yourself quietly, and you're ready to turn this off as quickly as possible if anybody comes in. But just know that if you're somebody who would have been the sideways eyes to Dan, that would have been me as well. I would have judged Dan and been a jerk probably about him not wanting to go out for beers. So that's, if you're feeling that way now, listen to this. Okay. I feel you, man.
All right. So this is an amends that I had to make, because I was that guy too. If you weren't doing Dan's program while Dan was drinking, you were a weirdo, and I was going to let you know, right? Doing the third person thing. Yeah. And I can remember leaning on a friend of mine being like, come on, man, let's go. Let's drink. Let's get drunk. This is what we're doing. We're camping. We're doing this. And finally the guy just like gives and was like, oh, I remember I'd forgotten about it. And I was sitting there one day, and I, out of nowhere, boom, I remembered that moment. And after going through all of that, just immediately felt horrible. Right. And he's not like me, he's as far as I know. And I couldn't stop. I was just like, oh man, I feel terrible. And it'd been a while since I'd spoken to the guy. And so, I jumped on, I texted him, I said, hey, can I call you? He goes, yeah. And so I jumped on the phone and I explained that whole situation. I mean, he goes, man, I don't even remember that. Totally. I was like, yeah, but I do. I was feeling really bad about it, because if that were to have happened to me early on in sobriety, I don't know if I would have been able to resist. I'd be so concerned about what those people had thought of me at that time that I probably would have just caved in, because I wasn't really solid in doing my own thing and working my program and making, a sober life work well for me.
Well, this has been a heck of a good conversation, Dan. Every time I say that, by the way, it always goes longer. But one thing I definitely would like to, you know, coax out of you if you're up for it is, you're a dad now, right?
Yeah.
For most people that are in the middle of the booze, I mean, 6 years is like a very, very long time. You remember what it would have been like to meet somebody who had 6 years sober, right?
Oh yeah. Oh man.
And here we are.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
you've had a chunk of life that includes marriage, includes a kid. Uh, what's it like? What's it like to cruise life with those elements in it as a sober dude?
You know, I don't think I'd have it any other way. Uh, Strictly for the fact that just my availability for my family, not just like physically, like being there. I work a lot. It's the nature of the industry that I'm in. So I'm gone for, 3/4 of, the day. So the amount of time that I have, and I work a lot of weekends and stuff too. So the amount of time that I have with my family is very precious, and be there middle of the night, especially when my daughter was little. Uh, if my wife was great and did like 90% of the time that she would get up in the middle of the night that anything would happen, my wife would be like, no, just stay in bed. I got it. But then there were some times where I'm like, what, I can do this. But the fact that there's no way, absolutely no way. I'd go home and put down like an 18 pack of beer, like I'd be liable to do on any given Wednesday. You're not going to get me out of bed in the middle of the night. And I'm not going to be super excited when I get home for anything except for to get into that booze. And I'm going to ignore everything around me to get my precious, right? I want to get into this so I can start feeling normal. So I'm able now to, be truly present and keep my life with them spontaneous to where, like, let's talk about a weekend, right? I don't know about you, but I would get into it pretty early on a weekend because why not? So by 10 a.m., I'm already drinking. By 2 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm pretty well lit. Just this last weekend that I had off, we were hanging out and it was a nice day and it was like 2:30 in the afternoon. Hey, let's go to the park. And that seems so small, right? And to like any normal person, they're like, so what? And I understand that, but to somebody like me that was incapacitated by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, to be able to at 2:30 load everybody into the car, drive down the road to the park sober, and go and play and run and do whatever it is that I want to do with my kid and my wife, and then come home and not be trying to rush through it because I want to get drunk or, be anxious because I didn't get enough before we left, or be pissed off because I'm hungover and I want to be drinking and I don't understand why I'm doing this. I'm able just to go and have fun just on the drop of the hat. Let's go. Let's get out of here. So it's like every once in a while I'll be sitting there and for anybody that out there that has kids, I would imagine I'm not alone, but the minute that I held my daughter, it completely changed my life. So 2 times in 6 years, I have these giant, changes in my attitude towards things. And so I'll be sitting there playing with my daughter and thinking about what would it be like if I was still drinking? And I don't really get emotional very often, but those thoughts of what it could have been like, those things hit me like a brick to the side of the head. And it's just, for me, it just reinforces the idea that this sober life and this program that I've been doing is what I should be doing. This is what's best for me.
What an awesome conversation. Thanks, Dan. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your experience, strength, and hope. Thanks for sponsoring me and you and all those conversations we had and now are reconnecting and having some more of. It's a big deal, man. So thank you. And I've yet to meet anybody in the rooms. So I've hung out with a lot of people who are sober, and I'm yet to hear somebody say, I wish I'd have waited longer to get sober. I've only heard the opposite. I wish I could have figured this out sooner. And so here's an example of that. And I know there's a lot. In my circles, I don't run into them all that often, unfortunately. And I'm actually working on that. One of the guys at my local meeting here is going to some younger people groups, and I'd love to hear what they're saying. I'd love to be around that more. So for those of you that are young that are listening, I'm describing an experience where, Dan here shows up at age 26 in a meeting that's probably, I'd say the average age is, north of 45, right? And so that could be a little daunting. In his case, it wasn't, which he talks about, right? But, know that there are all kinds of meetings, AA and not AA. So yeah, just connecting with other people with this condition, I'm telling you, it's useful. So take it how you will. All right. Hope you're I'm on a Saturday morning here doing my final edits to Dan's podcast, feeling inspired from the conversation, and grateful for another day where I'm not owned by alcohol. It blows my mind.